Alright, 저게 다른 류마게 자와 간의 체베네 나고 이 군로들이야 셈 군로리야 즉 가르무도 즉 안요모바 또 미도도 신의 심주체 되네 안요모바로 주되셔 컨트롤을 잘라서 받아 되네 군로 여바이나 하고 중에도 안돼 어다디 요모바데 라신 이갈이야 안에 동아제야기 유레 지산데 라진이가라 강아지야 풍고래 대산디 셈디케주네 로마레 섬제 디네게 안수도시니 녀모바들 견다제 디네 녀모바디바 안 고베게 잔답교관요 고고레세 안데 고산디라 간스 고고레세 야갑다 직 콘레게베네 콘레게세 유텔야 안 잠니죠 고미알라서 바다 디네 유텔라 미네 차바게바이나 텔미네 미도보 고미알라서 바 유디게네 견로 도시네 도 미도 다야라 소바다 안데니 야지 우주고 검야라 소바다 온도 신는 것은 나서도 신네 제월에서 대다 주고양도 도신네 디고 쉬어라.
Good afternoon. So this morning in the third verse we looked at the need to always be attentive to our motivation prior to and also during any engagement of activity, whether it's something we're doing or something we're saying, whether we're speaking or acting. Always be aware of our motivation, on the lookout or examining to see if there are afflictions present. And if afflictions are found, immediately reminding yourself that afflictions only cause suffering for oneself and others. They are to be immediately confronted and averted. And how to do so? One cultivates the opposite mind. So if we notice a mind of aggression towards someone, we cultivate love and compassion. If we notice attachment towards something, we look for the faults of what we are attached to try and get a more balanced view. Or if we're seeing our mind is very distracted, we rather calm it through the use of watching the breath. So this in brief is what we looked at this morning.
ane komshi shirai medi kodu nyomo pati kewa hako na ya ane kaya la kaya hako yores chisa nyele ya ane ngazu nyomo pati ma ye nyele na ngazu kiti na semle ya chandor chiya di keche mo res ye za na kiti na ane chigi shen ya ane chigi teni ki nyomo pati shen la nube samba sayadi kuni kechu me ya sembe ki ta do shene ngazu lunga shen la nube jawa zawa kini chigi me shen la nube samba tuesha kondro nga yalo soba dine zawa kini kechu me sembe dine ke samdadi da do shene samdo di do chandor chine do siyane ya do komgo gores chisa di kombai na da nyomo ba de so kele ya ane ngongo do shene chandor chele kechu mo re sa di shi ngazu dine shuma.
Also this morning I spoke about that unless one is an accomplished meditator, it's difficult to be aware of our mind whilst busy in activity, whilst engaging in conversation or doing various tasks. It's difficult to have the focus on our mind then rather than the activity or the conversation. So whilst we are still training, it's best to put energy into cultivating a powerful motivation every day, a motivation that arises from valuing others, caring for others, leading to the determination, all that I do today, whether I'm alone or I'm interacting with others, will not lead to harm. I'll ensure I do not bring harm to others, and therefore I will take care of my mind not to come under the influence of the afflictions. And wherever I can, I'll be of benefit to others. I'll ease their problems and difficulties. So here one sets a motivation based in valuing others as well as seeing the faults of the afflictions. And if one sets a sincere and stable motivation, that will help one to be aware in the day when afflictions have arisen and give you then the opportunity to avert them.
지난 데니기 삼담이나 안에 요모마게기 팽거래 대 배능아 저기 상예 쇼웨디와 뒤수질이야 뒤생고 랑고야다 뒤수질에 내가 내고야 되게 뭐이나 다 디린데 방을 삼나다이도 공단에 어떤가 상예 쇼웨 추지 디니치야 랑기 인선비게 삼로 편바다와이나 dine sanyi delia ane chiki dusyo tata le ni se tu ya da ane lega dine chiki di che hu yu sebe samlo pemba ta sha na sanyi dele dusyo tata le oda di che hu ya tata jaya yung go re di samlo gi diring samlo digi pembi gi pemba ta le samlo digi shugin gi ho rangwa me ba du she ni se yung go ni se ya da dine semle 난 lega le jaya ba le chi di yung go ro da di song de se bu ro.
So by developing a powerful intentional motivation, then it can have a lasting impact on our mind throughout the day. For example, if at night you recognize tomorrow morning, I have to get up early. I've got an important task to do and I need time to prepare or I need to start it early. And you have a very clear intention. I need to wake up early tomorrow because of what I need to do has importance. Then, when one falls asleep, one will have in the back of one's mind the need to wake up early, and one will do so. So similarly, by setting a stable motivation at the start of the day, particularly one that's sincere and heartfelt, it will have an ongoing effect throughout the day.
Shanlia, Jamada, Zawa Kongi, Sempike Samlo Diana, Jamze Kongi, Jisa Shanla, Nuve Samba, somebody, Zawaki, Jimmy, Sempike Desim, Sonyaki, Dom Simdini, Sempe Sam Dawena, Nasan Yala, Nisi Comia Pandore, and Dinizada, Deniki Jimmy, Sempeda, Dangan to Shan, Kazan, Shan Sudan, Tikidine, Duda, Negaptang. yu gang dui ne xian su dang zhuo ba da de ne zhuo bei ne ga le tu bei ne da le ga ru chi da gang zu ni de mi tu go le ga le zhuo ro da da di ring le ga zhuo san ni dang ga le ga zhuo li mi dang tu re an mi ge tu ya da de ne su jie bei tu bei ne an pa le ya an ji ge o du xian ne pa ji ge jia wang an ba ma jie ya da an di pa du xian ne an ji ge 네바로 자 강화로 최선의 텔레 세보금 투야라 소바다 디니지야 선비기다 두신의 삼다바이네 디리비삼의 펜바디네 담바이나 데네 안 지상이디바 두스카와 드로베네 드로니 네갑텔이야 데네 뇨모지비 네갑텔라 람서 오다 제엔체 젠투야기 개발 용거래 네 만중년에 두신의 원고 장도 양세야네 두삼당고디 펜바당고디 제침보라래.
Taking the illustration I just mentioned about how we can set an intention before we fall asleep to say, wake up early in the morning. So keeping that in mind, when recognizing that the mind has this capacity, at night when you go to bed, remind yourself of what your meditation topic, such as cultivating love and compassion, and set the motivation. Tomorrow morning when I wake up, I want to wake up with thoughts of love and compassion for others. And when I get up, I will immediately turn my mind to this topic and take some time to cultivate a motivation for the day. So then you drift off to sleep, having set that motivation. In the morning, when you wake up, you're likely to immediately be reminded about that intention you set that night. You can then directly turn your attention to cultivating an appreciation for others, a valuing of others, a caring for others. And then, in the same way, when you set your motivation for the day, so when you're sitting quietly, you cultivate an appreciation for others, then you think about what lies ahead for you today, where you are going, who you're likely to meet, and so forth. And as we saw at the beginning of the second verse, set that intention that today, wherever I am, at whatever time of day, whoever I am with, I will not come under the influence of the afflictions, but have my love and compassion as my guide. And thereby, I commit in all these circumstances, and here you can recall or think of what lies ahead of you. In all these circumstances, I'll hold others as dear, I will not harm them, but I'll benefit them in any way possible. And I will ensure my mind does not come under the influence of the afflictions. And if you know that you have some challenging encounters ahead of you that day, or potentially challenging encounters, you can role play how skillfully to deal with them. If you know that someone has a particular habit pattern that annoys you, role play how you can deal with that skillfully. And in this way, by setting a clear intention at the start of the day, that will have an impact throughout the day. Then, when you are with others, in particular if you have rehearsed how you will engage with them, if afflictions arise, you're much more likely to recognize them. And you can, with mindfulness, you can recall your meditation that morning, and that way you can deal skillfully with the afflictions, patience can arise, and you can deal skillfully with this challenging situation. So what I'm describing here is this process of meditation, which has as a synonym habituation, where we are developing virtuous, wholesome, habitual ways of thinking, and thereby breaking non-virtuous, unwholesome, habitual ways of thinking. And by doing this repeatedly over a sustained period, the way of thinking will naturally change and become ever more virtuous.
Mi ane chuk myomo chenpo kongro tsobo dwecha chenpo denegi ane miro shidwada dene ane yongures tugures mi dene yobada ane dene ane yaji pe chik mi sem makiwa kanga shu chedegen ne nasa pe ne nabu ne trabu ne je kanga yedi an luchi yongures chisa dene yedi kabliya ngazu samla kanes tango gure sedi dadi sam dana ma yan dene shi sungor dene ma.
Now, returning explicitly to the text, we come to the next verse, which is about how to skillfully deal with our mind when encountering people with really challenging personalities, people that we find difficult. So here we come to the presentation on how to deal with such situations. The fourth verse. When seeing ill-natured sentient beings overwhelmed by powerful non-virtue and intense suffering, as though discovering a precious treasure, may I hold them dear, for they are rare to find.
Karina kanga jaya da nyose cheyage denegi yedigen semchen gansa ti yore denegi tongyo dene samlokar tangori saji sungo de temana rinjin tera nyeba na shin pe chik telya nyebar kayigi ani cheba jingori sa sungor wada.
The first lines in the Tibetan starts with ill-natured sentient beings. So those who have personalities that are difficult to be around. They are easily enraged, they're insistent on their own view, may be very proud, whatever it may be, the various expressions of this, but it's dealing with those who are particularly challenging.
Denege Rashin Iga Gangante Dugan, Denege Samu Mirror 200, Anzugars Samno the Mujidan and Anzugar some gores and Lamsa Delia and the Corona Pa and the Kunjiana, Capte Joagi, Samno Kogorova, Chizabet, Midi, Duksha Shurisha, Midi Bed, Jig. Conrad over million, yes, show Ganga show take the bed, Dukjarisha said, Kunjiana, then the Sosugi, Nuvayana, Delia and Javi Tony, Pa and then Land Royal Roaching onto this some legal ones there. The Pui Dinegi caused me to Jenima, Shiagi, called dog, never say, Doctablia, want to do send the summer course in to Slere Yungor.
Yeah, we think of the kinds of personality types that push your patterns that you particularly dislike. It may be when you're meeting someone who you know is easily enraged, so you have to be very careful that you don't say the wrong thing, or someone who's self-centered, that it's always about them, or they're pushy, wanting things to go their way, not at all concerned about the impact on others. Whatever personality type it is, look at how one responds. Merely thinking of them now, there's an aversion, a pushing away. this from their side, or from our side towards them, there's this pushing away, this dislike. And all too easily we will criticize them, certainly in our way of thinking, and all too easily when talking to others. And if we can have nothing to do with them ever again, that would be ideal. So the way of responding, it almost certainly would not be violent, but it would be as if we could be violent to make sure we never had anything to do with them. That is the strength of our adversity to being in their presence.
Korea kabyo kole nebe samba chewe samba an sam danje dushin pa kabyo joya de ne sosugi niba kanya tyenje pa jinya la soba da dene jige chubu jaya la soba de yona de shuri da de ne ge yungor wa da di nganzo sam da da ne pa sho de ne tongye lamsan de ya sebo ko ma to ba che an de ya khon ke an di khon ko le ya ko duk je ne pa do ya ge tablam le ya sosugi jinya la soba da de ne nya da ta ya la soba de ne shuri da de ne yungor wa da ma ye ya la soba yona di wa da ji da ge da ka ne ne.
So the usual response to this, to such people, is an aversion. And accompanying the aversion is a deep dislike, a rejection of this person. And the way this may be expressed may be with argument. It certainly may be with talking about them to other people. But if we were to take away the constraints that we normally have, then it would be the full expression of how we feel would probably be with physical violence. And where there are those individuals or communities who don't have such restraint, that is the response, one of physical violence. So here we see the way that we respond to such difficult people is with a deep dislike, a deep aversion, rejection of them.
And in the ones of Nigel Ligore, Nigel Odangi, Queen, the Mazing, but in a Holia Capture, Mazing, meeting Alia, Tonjo Dangere, other what Jungumino, Kokai, Jorisha, Sembe, Tonjo Dangere, Sembe, some Horchin, Nigel Kaja, and Dino Cotingalia, and the Semshul Mas on the Juchero.
And with our response, it's also quite possible there'll be a sense, some pride arising. When we criticizing them, seeing ourselves as better, I would never be like this, I'm not like that, I'm so much better in this regard, and pushing them away. And with the sense of inflated pride could also come with an expression of aggression because of not valuing them.
Oh, daddy, Denigi, Tony, the Simjan, Gansatine, Tony, Delia, and the Conra Lang, Pa Conra Lang, and the Pet Palia. Di Kolia, Dito, Denegate, Dotablia, Chick, Neve, Save, Sambi, Gunela, Lucian, Gunela, Gunot, some daddy notorious, or that notorious. Dine, some Notavena, some Nodi, Genjine, and the Trubujaya, and the Zinga, Soba, Lucidu, Gabriel and the Sosogon Raja, Sosogi, Zubolia, Naza Chimbo, and Higher, Gabriel and Pacha de Suez, and Carpajolia, Gangatia, Mungu, Jeza, Denegate, some Notadi. Tebe samba, Nube samba, Tony, daughter of some data, that's some of the notary, this some time your marriage order.
Rejecting someone so viscerally, having this strong aversion to them, this deep dislike of them, leads to the likelihood of conflict arising, certainly the likelihood of you talking badly about this person. And it is likely also to lead to a spontaneous joy arising when harm comes to them, taking pleasure in any suffering that they experience. Also, when one's feeling this aversion towards them, your own mental peace is completely lost, and you're likely to hold on to this aversion for some time, and thereby be deeply unhappy for quite some time. So this needs to be well recognized, that this way of responding to such a person causes such harm to us. And if it's not expressed, we are the one who are suffering. If we express it, others will suffer alongside us or along with us. So here what needs to be recognized is this way of rejecting others, or that we reject others, and we do so with such energy that this is harmful. And it's only harmful to us, and when expressed, it causes harm for others too.
Da dina shi da an ji ji da ne ga ni de na ta ren bu yi de gen da ne an xian dai bei ji mi du su jian xian le nie ba da gang an meng bu zhe de gen mi de ge dam ji tong a da an ji yin zhen na le tong a la so ba da de ne ge sen jun na guo ye de mi de liang de kong zhen la ya da bei du jia de ne bei du jia de sen bei kong zhen la ya la so ba de gyun ji jie yong gu ba di sam da ta de de zhi ye shi wo da di sam de da gyao ma ye shi wo da.
When one deeply dislikes someone, being in their presence is unbearable, but even when not with them, merely thinking about them or hearing their name is likely to set you off emotionally. And then you can be a long way from them, perhaps another side of the country, and still have a deep unhappiness merely through thinking about them. So all of this needs to be recognized so as to see that this way of responding causes so much harm for oneself.
On the nigger some shan lia cei samba de new samba and it jan lai control lai yo control de da new mong ba res di ran shan ni ga lia ce de lai na ran shan ni ga le new ba re and ce chi mai na di de bu di ge so so dong an yo cha go re je san da sam lo di man so lo mo ga ya res je san di sam lo de ta kyo ma di ba sam lo me wa so ko res.
I'm talking quite a lot about our response here, because this is such a normal way of responding that we need to recognize it isn't correct. It was not helpful and it's not justified. That through having negative thoughts towards others, this harmful intent, almost wanting something bad to happen to them or taking joy when it does, and at the very least an aversion towards them, likely a lot of anger towards them, this causes us to suffer now. And we can also understand too that through these karmic imprints that we accruing in lives to come, we'll also suffer from this response.
Dana denige simje ngamba denige nyomo chen dusu chen de ne se che de gan de ne to da ne ko le ya de kong ro sa da an ne ko le ya ne be sam ta me na an da gar che wo re sam gar tang go re la du de le so bo kong go re Sebo kumgore, kolya jamni je kumgore, so dene kansa tele, dene ke soso dusu che, de sebo kumgore side, sebo kum side, soso be jik tongchung da soso yongke gore si go mare, da sebo kum side pa konrla go mare, so sebo kumgore, pa jik seba side tu konrla je, dene ke nyese tongyo de soso sem magi ba da be ganga da dene ke konrla ne sem muse bare, dene ke jik tongyo de jik pa sim höshi soso sim höshi sim lia yuwa höshi je pa kong la ya de ne be sama ma je ba je du xin de tu ba ne de le se ba se wo le o di se ba ko ko res de ne ge se ba kom ba na soso sim hyle yung ko le soso sim kang a yung ma res se ba kom ba za pa le ne be sama ji ma res di ba sa ma res se ba kom ko res se ba kom de ne ga ko musin jamni je kom ze wo kom ing je sam ing je kom ko le ko le ya jam ba da ze wo ing je kom ko res di kombaina seba kombata kole mine jama inji kombaina di soso anlia cetele na soso sem lele sha da gewasa ya an digi shanle manyopa an cetele na soso gewa patu me ba sa ya da an digi yenje gewa chimai ne soso digi ya na sanje na sanje ko mo thoya le ya ta nyen ru gu res chesa da denige kansa thong le de le seba komya da an jamba da zewa kom go res wo.
So thus far, I've spoken about the faults of the usual way of responding to people who are ill-natured. So then, how am I supposed to respond if not in that normal way? It's a way presented previously already, that of being patient. When patient, then we can respond with love, compassion, and wisdom. So to talk a little bit about this mind of patience, because the understanding of patience in Buddhism is a little different from how it's often understood in society. A mind that is patient, or a person who is patient, their mind is characterized by strength and by confidence. And this is because of their long training of their mind, that when they face adverse circumstances, which in this instance is meeting someone with quite a hideous personality, such a circumstance doesn't disturb them. Their mind stays relaxed and spacious. The person may be speaking to them in an unkind way, but their mind stays relaxed and spacious. They are not upset. This is such a mind. It has inner strength, has confidence, because one has developed one's mind so well. Now, instead of responding in the usual way in the world with viciousness or with pain inside, and thereby creating non-virtue, one is able to respond with love and compassion towards this person. One can respond using one's intelligence, so in a way that is wise to that situation, a way that is appropriate to that situation. And in this way, one accumulates virtue. So from the same circumstance, instead of creating the causes for suffering and making the situation worse, one is rather making the situation better and creating the causes for happiness. So one is happier now in this life. The person you're interacting with, you'll probably ease their suffering, and you're creating the causes which will be of benefit in lives to come, and you'll bring about the attainment of Buddhahood. All of this comes by subduing the mind, training the mind, and responding with patience.
So that I'm be cornered so Bendigo mission Chazala New Secretary Bendigo Chimilia on the Jamnija Ganski to the Dine Jamnija sometimes the Ben Norge Assembly some agency around the Dine.
And a further common misunderstanding is but I'm being encouraged to respond with love and compassion to someone who's harming me, verbally, probably verbally, or acting in a way contrary to my needs, and now I'm supposed to respond with love and compassion. How is that going to help?
I think I got some Dangors in it. I do the nigger never told you doing to Konaki. Gansa down Kuyu, no more needy, Karachi, my Jiba some down to the Konangura. That Deliang and the Garsam was in Java Shimbuche, mediator, the nigger to suching mediator, Kuyu, no more needy, Yawachi, what is it? Yawachi. That middle Hawaii, Mare, Kokora Sare, Copes, Korea, that nursing gear, that nursing gear, the new corner gear do, and it Seminalia, some not any corner do, meet the Ramamba, then Chigore, the beauty at the Chigores. Chisa Dini some Chisa you more corn shell, never somebody get Dujares, the Dickun Tower, Dipet Dujares. Mi corona, mi the Rawayoma, Ninja, the Nigi, some of the Nigi corridor, mi the Rawame, Bakanga, or Kotu Series, and the Nigi Mideda, Kuyu, Yomo, Tuzuchan, some not needed Yawache, Kuyu, some non Yomoch, Tuzuchan de la Quen Daje, mi corona, mi some digger Rawan to Meva, Shawan to you are the midi Inje, Sambeda, called Jininje, Kokanga, Chegidu, Jezad, Midelia, digging June, Dewa Chunas. That do not done travel show, some big douche in a Nijicum, yes, or that.
The mistake we all commonly make is we do not differentiate the person from the person's mind. So in this case, their ill nature or their afflictions. We see the person as being those afflictions. But if we differentiate, we recognize the person cannot be their afflictions. And the person is not choosing to be ill-natured. They're not choosing to be aggressive or angry or wanting to cause harm. This isn't a choice. It's not something with freedom that they decided, now I'm going to explode with rage. It's rather something that has happened to the person rather than something the person is in control of. So when we differentiate like that, we can then say, of the two, the person and their afflictions, the afflictions are worthy of scorn. They are what are causing harm, but they are different from the person. The person is suffering because of those afflictions. Recognizing that, now that the person and afflictions are separate, and the person is suffering because of their mind being dominated by the afflictions, having already trained in what we saw in the earlier verses, in valuing others, in caring for others, developing an appreciation for others, here it will be now much easier for compassion to arise for them, because you recognize that despite their red face and their bulging eyes, they are in deep pain. And that they are in deep pain. So in this way, you respond with genuine compassion for the suffering being before you.
Jambadan sewa nije kumgores, Chesada mitele swebokum, Dene Jambadan sewa nije kumgores. And the nigga Gombe Honeda, Sosugi, Kuigi, Samlung the Dobege, Tablamdi, Sosugi, Tapshi, that jigge, Gansa delia, Gansa de la Jambadan sewa nije kum. Dene nije Gombe Tone, Kuigi, Samlung Amba, Duzu Chendigi Pa, Manzugi, Doyage, Tapshi, Namje, Bije, Daje, that 곧 매번 독탑이 탑시 다 여바이나 판도 주투에나 네 소식이 뉴바 되네 여바이나 되네기 토네 판도 그 남지 랑게 삼로 장된당 아니 지 탑람이 토네 아니 그 삼로 안바당 되네기 초 공로 삼바도 전에 최외 삼바디게 도야게 탑람나 비수지지 독탑 지고 그래 제제네 미디 쌤 기후 시대서야다 미디 야고 차야게 도시는 탑람나 도스페지 지고 그래서 그렇다. Sigme the underestimates that Dijan said that.
So when you've trained your mind to recognize this, even in the heat of this confrontation, you will recognize that this person who's just exploded in front of you, they have no freedom. This is not something they willed. This response isn't something they willed. Rather, they through their or due to their deep habituation to this afflicted way of thinking, they're responding in this way. So you recognize that they therefore are in pain, and compassion can arise easily within you for this person because you're seeing someone suffering before you. Now, with your mind being dominated by virtues such as compassion, your mind is relaxed, it's spacious. You yourself are unafflicted right now. This means you can use your wisdom or intelligence to think clearly. How best should I respond? What is the skillful way to respond to this person? And there are many ways one can respond. One can say nothing, one can explain, or one can apologize, whatever it may be. But you have the mental space to think how best to respond. And in this way, the situation can be dealt with skillfully and most probably the aggression will be diffused and the person will start to calm.
강아지야다 미망고에서 쇠기 냥아로 쥐어버이나 데니스토나 당한적이 소소기 콜야 닝제 샘비 콜 닝제 콤야다 콘로말라바 쇠보콤 닝제콤 데니토네 소소기 콜야 쥐어버디 잡으러 제제 쥐어버 잡고 제제 콜야 디 강아지게 란시 코롱기 미션 망보지 소 쥐어기 냥아도 소를 겹투고요버나 소소기 파 징제 아니 코 쥐제 아니 지 년도벌 지제야 라서바나 라바 담샤야 라서바 소소기 제투고여바나 어디니신의 숨급 제호래서 그 삼로디 그 제와당 잠바 관닝제다 그 디니신의 그 되시는 코로나 디버 먹어사가 닝제 삼백에 니제 고미하다 아니 그 디니 수업한데 삼제 먹어보지 시루고 되다 건도 강아시고 쳐서 닝제 삼백에 디니기 니제 삼백 군에 라제 소소기 니버 여바나 소소기 그 숨급 제투에 소소기 배제 잡고로 제제 지죄람 잡고 제제 배제 당제 그 송급제 가투야기 소속이 하고 봐 있는 니가 여봐 있나 도시네 죄람 잡고 배제 당제 그 송급제네 지금 해서 올다니 이교양 판도 친구용 거로 와 제가 도시 콩로사제 콜리아 네베 삼바다 제외 삼모 콩로사제 죄버 잡고 지 마제 바제 콜레 팬베 삼바 인제 삼바지 그 디바 먹고 인제 삼바 삼다 파줘데 심제 먹고 저 소도 자 배수 주수에서 삼비게 되네게 안내지게 인제 삼바서 군에 나제 소수기 뉴바 여바이나 안 뉴비 토네 안내지 콜레야 언도시네 소수기 잡이 집에 토네 가투나 송급제야데 제도나 송급제야 디네 매베네 다 년도바다 디네 톨파 지 가바다제 랍제 람사 두신 송규제는 송규제 두신에 제월마다 어고 닝제다고 년도벌라는 년도벌 지저 전가나 주그레선비 삼는 당제 메모고 쓰지는 이거 말와 대자 두신에 탑람도네 두신에 삼로 잠바데 인제 선비 군에 라제 두신에 송규제월이 제투에 뉴버에는 되는 제월에서
If the person of the ill-natured person that you're thinking of is someone who's easily enraged, you recognize that this person is frequently then suffering intensely, that all too often for the smallest of reasons, they explode. So this person is continuously hurting themselves. And because of having so little self-control, they all too often express this rage towards others, bringing pain and misery to many. Thinking about this person suffering under the weight of their own afflictions, compassion can arise for them. And in particular, a person who's easily enraged and has some power and authority, you recognize that through their rage, they can physically cause harm to others. They may fight with others, beat others, they may even kill. And in this way, thinking like this helps to strengthen your compassion, recognizing how this person is creating so much harm for themselves and potentially could create even more. And then when you are in their presence and they explode as they so regularly do, recognizing that this being is suffering, you calm them, knowing that not only will you ease their suffering right now, but you may also prevent them from heading off and fighting with the people that they are unhappy with. You rather calm them so that they don't create stronger non-virtue. And in this way, someone who utilizing perhaps their physical strength would be able to, under the influence of their rage, actually physically harm people, take life. You are protecting them. You're protecting them from their own afflictions. You're protecting them from their own rage. So that at least on this occasion, they aren't creating the causes to be arrested, to be imprisoned. So you go through this mental process so as to really change the way we think about people. All too often, there's a rejoicing, a joy when someone we dislike receives their comeuppance, when they're imprisoned or receive some other kind of penalty. But rather here, recognize that these are people with no control over themselves. Their anger dominates and controls them, probably other afflictions such as pride too. And in this way, you train your mind so that instead of you responding in a habitual way, you responding in an afflicted way, and thereby creating non-virtue, as well as you suffering in their presence, you rather train your mind in a way so that you respond under the influence of patience, love and compassion and wisdom, and thereby you create virtue and you help others. You help calm their mind, you ease their suffering, and you become one of possibly the rare forces of good in the life of someone who suffers so.
Denegi molam jare, Mahobana, Denegi Semjen, Denish Toba, and a Jambada Zivitone, and then Gombati, Sunam Dilet in the Quigi, Yomobe, Samloti, Pai, Shije, Shelia, Pembe, Samloti, Giorgio, Sada, Mahobana, Denegi Semjen, that in the Shigmongui, the name Bautumeba, your Tisu Semjen, Tamje, Edilia, and Jamziga, Lamdun Jeje, and Conjugula, and the Jig, Sem Shidu, Tiki the Truth of our shores, the Inzangi. Dini tuba shuo se peki da malam jaya da di dun da la yang e sim jaya tam jigi dun san yu kubo toba jigi se peki da jan shu sim jie du xin da sam da di du xin jie ho le di jie bai na da sam na dini da bai na dini ge 다 개발했어. 지사다 내가 비야 핑거라. 소식이 개발치마래 핑거래. 되네 상교고방 토발에 다 녀루고래. 지사다 되네게 통해도 대리야 쇠바콤이야. 잠바나 제와콤이야. 되네게 도시네. 디수에 돈달이야. 한신 상교고방 토비치도 상교고방 토벌쇼스 셈게바. 도시네 냠네 섬로 되네 장도 제고래 해서 다디. 다 장주선반은 미되는 능고를 장주선반이 되는 지고를 당 안쪽에 되는 남산 제투 말아 되는 마도된 안쪽 두시는 년은 두시는 되는 삼다지 장도를 지고를 해서 그러다.
What's important too is in this whole process of inner reflection of meditation, we come to know ourselves better, come to recognize our truer capacity. And there certainly will be circumstances where in the past we've been a bit timid, and now we recognize actually I can get involved and be of benefit. But it's important to always act in accordance with one's capacity, not to extend oneself too far or to put oneself in any danger, but act in accordance with one's capacity. And where you know people who are very aggressive, perhaps it is best to keep your distance as much as you can. And for them, make prayer, make sincere prayers that they come to meet someone or gain the guidance they need so as to be able to subdue their mind. And if not in this life, may it come soon in lives to come. And certainly in terms of those that we observe in the world who are creating a lot of harm, we're not going to meet them, but we can make prayer that they meet someone who can influence them to act in more skillful ways. Furthermore, you can take what you observe in your interpersonal relations with others, or what you observe in the world, as ongoing motivation to abandon the afflictions within, seeing the harm that attachment, that anger, that pride causes. When you see it displayed in others, use it as a motivation. I need to strive further to abandon my own afflictions so that I can spiritually develop and be of benefit to more beings. And how bodhisattvas would relate to this is very similar in that they would, when they see beings afflicted, their commitment to become a Buddha for the sake of others grows. Their determination to become a Buddha quickly so that they can benefit others grows. And in terms of our own aspiration and prayer, we can express it in this way. Strengthen our determination to abandon our afflictions so that the people that we know now or that we observe at a distance who are causing a lot of harm, express that aspiration. May I abandon my afflictions. May I grow spiritually so that such people, may I be able to interact with them in a skillful manner so that I can guide them not to create such non-virtue, to reduce their afflictions and to be of some benefit in this world. May I quickly become a Buddha for the sake of others. So what I've described here is how bodhisattvas live. They interact with others and they make prayers from a distance to be of ever greater benefit. For ourselves, our capacity in terms of direct engagement is much, much more limited, and we need to act in accordance with our limited capacity. But certainly in terms of strengthening our aspiration to transform our mind so we can be of ever more benefit, this we can do and should do.
Digdu drapwe nentong se sido da jesa da digdu drapwe nentong se sido da nganzo ne samjien dene gyawang ame ge legi digbi divasabe digi jebu ge minjin be jinne naso jige ne naso drapwo dene ge ganga shu yue dige andi semma giba dene ganga yue dige dene tongye andi je dene tongye nganzo garase andele yue ge 마투에게 마태에게 내가 어다 줘봐도 되게 직제디 두신에 파유에게 탑시도 여러 번 지기로 디디 지겨 말해서 되네기 통해도 심전지 소리 미지배 직파 인식금 거래서 대배 인지 다 되네기 동안 나르셔 동안들에 타나 빼면 약불에 선배기 인식금이야다 안 되네기 지게 니콘데 되네기 동안들에 타지 대화의 템퍼쇼 세배게 잠바다 인식금 되네기 소수게다 니버여바이나 소수 니베톤 니버여나 딱 가지 돈의 소소리야 대수기 내나자라 자야래 面觉的地面刚给团里呢，判断刚头的主部的时候呢，地多者的原被切的。
The second line, overwhelmed by powerful non-virtue and intense suffering. So this then is the actual lived experience of ill-natured beings, that their minds are overwhelmed by powerful non-virtue and they suffer intensely. So when you can separate the person from their afflicted mind, you can remind yourself that this enraged person, this arrogant person, this pushy person, they are suffering. They are feeling alone, estranged from others, and they right now are in pain. And this isn't a new experience for them. They are deeply habituated. They've been experiencing this throughout their life, and they are doing so because of their habituation from previous lives, which means they've been suffering like this for so long. And almost certainly, this being so afflicted, it has an impact on their body. They may well be experiencing physical suffering, illness. And moreover, when they do experience illness, because of this deep habituation to afflictions, their suffering will be far more intense than someone who has taken good care of their mind, who will suffer from the same illness to a far lesser degree. So recognizing this, seeing these two lines together, when seeing ill-natured sentient beings overwhelmed by powerful non-virtue and intense suffering, from those two lines we can see that the only suitable response is one of compassion. So we have limited capacity. We may be able to directly engage with such people, or we may need to keep our distance. Or we may be able to help them if they need certain medical treatment they can't afford, perhaps helping them in that way, or if they need mental health, helping them afford it and so forth. So we act in accordance with our capacity to ease their suffering, but recognize that the only way that is suitable to respond is with compassion.
Da sam da na de kan stang go re la de da den ji ge de ji dan sem tu tu chen yo mo chen de ne ye tu ba da tong wa da de ne ge ne ne na se be ma se gang ta go yue de gen tong ye du ane tong we sam no na la ka dang go sun ren jin de da che ba da nie ga nie ba ge bi chi se shuo se a sam no be ma si de jin bo che de ji be xiu ji be na da ka sang ge xu ba na ji ga de Dersedi, Rimbochi, Dersedi, and the Dapene, Serata, Uda, Dorje Palala Soba, the Chick, Chembochi Ravan, the Bear, Gao Shujirua, on Tinashi, then these two of the Galbe, Denigi, Gao Shuchi or Rezer, Derania or that Denigi Rak, 2 years, Denigi meet Chair, but Galakao Shure, Denigi Travel, Bear, Yago Johnson or Sembege. Derania Banage, she was Gauger, Derry Tabata, Nebra Gawa, Denibe, the two Gawari, Denitu, the Bear, or didn't do what Yago Shuju, some big some daje, Denia, Digares, then you two when Alia, Jamba Sevocomia Rayada, Jamba the Injocomia Ragidu, Sabata. Sevocomia than Jamba the Injocomba, the Italy Chanju Semke, then I saw you go about a time year ago. The nigging I saw you go about toy. My Taiwan Rangi Digi child, Dunga said, Digi, Duelia, Bear, as a Panto Chimbodu, the name of Yago Johnson, and bigger, George Gasor Jegores, Gasor Jejan, the name of Bemas, Yahuin, and Gaujin, Gasor Gagin, and Delia, and Lucina Champions, you come Sevocom, as soon. Rinjin Derda, a Chapatara, said Dernia Banaja, didn't depend on the Rua Damazuki, Chig, Dene, Yaharu, Zemora, Chig, Yando tops on the back, you Gagurua down there, that parents you tops on something, Gahurua, Dinashin, and the Denigin Yaban Rava Nashin, Patrick, Denig Semjan, Dusuching Ambada, Nana Ganga, Shu, you didn't taunt it, Patrick Sem Kavuchen, Denig Kolia, Kavuchen, Dusin. Didn't I didn't have a shoe Johnson, Sambegi, Chick Gawoche, Garrison, Tangalia, Chambat, Comiara, Ninja Comiara, Dening, some beauty, gave you some of the ya, 1 year on the page, San Yoko Motovala, Tanya draw to the bear, Yakutu, Sambegi, Denig, some Naja, Gaso, Denia Banajin, Gawoche or Asia, Gawochin and a Jabber Zimba short, a Jabber Zimson, Delia, must start Chimbo, the Yakushu, the Jamba, the Jewa, Jewa, said.
having trained well in the ways presented thus far in the text, and being able to interact with others who are ill-natured, who do have really challenging personalities, being able to interact with them in a way that eases their suffering. How one will experience it is presented in the third line, as though discovering a precious treasure. So when coming across such a person, instead of, like how we currently are, averse to them, wanting not to have to see them again, it will be as if we'd found a precious treasure. You can maybe think back to the miners some centuries ago here, when they found a nugget of gold, or in areas where there are diamonds, if they found a diamond, that great joy. Or what we see in sporting competitions, when a team wins, this great ecstasy that they experience. This is how a skilled practitioner, a bodhisattva, will be when encountering a person who's ill-natured, a person, because they'll recognize this is a being who's suffering intensely. This is a being who is in desperate need for relief from their pain and their misery. And now I have an opportunity to ease their pain. And for the practitioner who has trained their mind well, they're not needing to do anything special. They're not needing to gather their strength and recall their training. It's just a natural expression of who they are. Love and compassion easily arise within them, because they know this being before them is in pain. And their wisdom, their intelligence can shine through, and they can respond in a way to calm this person. And thereby, great joy will arise in their mind, knowing that a suffering being, someone who's deserted by most, now is feeling a bit of relief from their pain. And moreover, this will add to their own inner sense of confidence that these years of training are paying off. I can see the difference in how I'm responding now from how I used to. I can see the impact I'm making in lives of suffering beings in a way I couldn't before. Therefore, I know my spiritual journey is going well. I know my attainment of Buddhahood is fast approaching. And in this way, I can have confidence. My capacity is growing, and I'll be of ever more benefit to others. So this, then, is how one who is skilled in training in the way presented thus far will respond when meeting someone of challenging personality.
Denegi ne na the Tibetan Drabo with me, but in the Tona do, the Rinchen Ternia Banashan Kawashu, Jene, Antige, Shan Yungor, that Denegi, Samlanalia, Gasor Shuchi, Denegi Gasor Kene, de Shalia, Dunga Siana, Digi Trivial, Jamba, Zewa Geje, Pando Rudusan, Gachem Dubor, this to do, not Digi, Denegi Yamlen Chair do, that Jamba dan Zewa com, Zewi Yamlen, then this was Delia Gangatige, Sege, Tablam, and the Chigi, Pa, and the Chigi, Garsore, Bene, Menju Chewa, the Kaditon Robert Chewa, Dushin, Ganga Sege, Duche, Jimbe Yamlen Chagore, Jimbe Yamlen, Sube Yamlen, the Negi Yamlen, the Negi Pando Juela, Gashing Gushi, Similia, Galana, Tony Juyodu, and the Zundri Yamlen, Dushin, Jezada, Jimbe Yamlen, Sube Yamlen, Zundri Yamlen, Jamnije. 내 자주 셈냠네 도시니 뭐 관계 공도 폐하를 도시는 용거로 지금 전시 선바디기 빼 마세기다 되네게 투베나 즉 렌지 때리에 봐 나신제 가부치고레스 전시 선바디기 되네 용거지 난거레스 제자당 알아서이네 도시네 셈내야 롯 당번도 도시는 빼 되네 신에 도시기 대치 셈 셈내야 롯 장고레스 근데 장바에는 셈는 살직다 이다 도시 안에 양도 당바에는 셈내야 니슈 철셔 주고레스 다 돈다다 셈도 디스 동고레스
So what I've just described here is the lived experience of bodhisattvas. This is how they go through their lives, delighting in easing those who are most in need. When a bodhisattva meets someone of ill nature, who's easily enraged, who's arrogant and full of themselves, someone who's condescending and dominant, the bodhisattva recognizes that this person is in deep pain, suffering intensely, and therefore their heart opens to them and reach out to ease the suffering of this being in front of them. Because the bodhisattva isn't threatened by this person, isn't fearful of this person, but recognizes that this is a person in deep need of love and tenderness. And therefore the bodhisattva can reach out and offer their support in any way that's required. Or often that will be in terms of talking in a way to ease this person's pain. Maybe they'll be receptive to some guidance, but probably not. But they may well be receptive to some material support, or if their health is poor and therefore they're in pain and their physical pain is causing them to explode like this, perhaps they can offer some financial support so they can afford good medical treatment. So in this way, the bodhisattva, with a mind dominated with love and compassion and patience, is able to offer or practice generosity. And by ensuring that throughout this process, their mind remains within the confines of what is ethical, the bodhisattva is practicing ethical restraint. And of course, the mind throughout this process is patient, therefore love and compassion can arise. And moreover, the bodhisattva is delighting in this opportunity to ease the suffering of someone who's in intense pain, someone who's shunned by even those closest in their lives. So the bodhisattva here is practicing the perfections of joyous perseverance, of patience, of ethical restraint, of generosity. And this is how bodhisattvas live their lives. This is their experience of bodhicitta. So what's described here for us is an aspiration to hold to. It's difficult for us to be like this in person, but we can sit quietly in our room, on our cushion or in our chair, and we can role play, we can practice. We can come to recognize that the person is not their afflictions, and thereby train our mind to eventually become like these great beings, bodhisattvas.
진에게 다 쇠바다 잠 이제 곰도 신의 전시 셈바디게 도시들 이제 때쳐바나신 직지고래서 가르스네 되는 냠는 제발에 되는 소속이 쇠배 냠는 이야기 줘야 다 잠 이제 야기고 줘야 진비 냠는 뭐 권이고도 배주고 그래 될라 되는 산유고 봐 타라니는 주고 그래 되자 도시네 렌지 때려니바나신 가부 체험을 김전으로 되차고로 봐 안디마제 셴리아 문에 전시심비 자와디 셴기 판도 셴기 동아시아데 셴기 디기주야데 제가 되니게 강아의 메딩엔질라 아니 디기주투야게 주야 고업래메로다 대그 아니 셈바 상부 유엔텔이야 아니 지 콜이야 아니 판도 제투야게 니 제라요메로다 셈감바다 되니게 뇨모자로 쳐베이나 델이야 람된제 안지 콜레야 최셰제 데네트네 고셈바 교왔다 셈 상부 촐티야 고업래고래 안디네가 강아 유엔델이야 강아델이야 니지기 면죄제야당 데네가 로바제고 강아레 세티기 주요 그래서 데네자 더 컨트롤에 데네기 디기 주야 쇠버콤야 데네게 라고르 셴레 판도제라고 진짜 제주심비 자와세데 셴레 펜비 자와 쪼어디로다 셴레 펜비 자와까지 야침을 주베네 디zem게 랑게 유엔데디 데위기 상지 고마토에 주야디 규디 타년에 로 누베 쳇시르고 봐 진짜 데네게 잠 도시는 데네자다 때나 신신 녀바 지오지 거치어와데 임제로 디로와
Bodhisattvas will sincerely relate to people with powerful non-virtue and intense suffering in this way, relating to them as being of greater value than even a treasure. The bodhisattva will want to be in the presence of such people more than they'll want to find jewels and diamonds and the like, because they recognize that the great importance of such interactions. So bodhisattvas may well often be around kind-hearted people and will be able to benefit those such people in different ways. But opportunities such as being around those who are overwhelmed by powerful non-virtue and intense suffering, these are probably far less common. So such an opportunity the bodhisattva will embrace, because this is where the bodhisattva knows they are most required. People such as these are alone, they are isolated, they're rejected by most people. They are in desperate need of someone who sincerely cares for them, for someone to whom they matter. And the bodhisattva, when encountering such a person, this person, or to deal with such people, The Bodhisattva has been training for lifetimes. So this is the ideal opportunity they have been training for, to help those in most pain, in most need. So for this reason, this person is like discovering a precious treasure, because of the immensity of merit that the Bodhisattva creates. They know their spiritual journey is going to be powered by helping this person, and therefore their enlightenment comes ever closer. So for a Bodhisattva, such people that society generally reject and despise, the Bodhisattva embraces sincerely.
Dine zata di ngarang zuge lapche nyamlen che di ta dine ki semje tiksu chanda dine khonro sowa da nyomo chenpo sijanle nöse chegen semje ta dine ki tongwa da tyoba la soba da dine ki yoba di jige wangman ze dine ki yungorwa hakukorwa andi dine ki thoda nyingje ta dine ki that kola nyomo me nyomo yi shawa du yubare rawa yomar nyingje sambige nyije komyada Ninjugum, that the Kolea, the Niki Simji, some long and Bati Paseche, and the Tiki de Dembach, Giona, Yon Shore, Sembege, Jambacumiade, the Niki Samda, and the Niki that did do drop on Nimbus, sit down to Sine, down Zuki to Sine, that the Zemlinalea, Mineva, and the Chicken to Milsivine, Neva, Mengana, the Duet, Chixamlanalea, Menga bottom of her, did not Mengana, the Yubanashi, Menga dinala, never did again, that been 지게 강한되게 쉬우지 내가 쉬우게 되지 안데서 찾아는 이제 다 되게 닝지 선배다 되게 내려뉴도 타워 쉬어서 맨주되게 야고 용지 뉴 내려뉴도 타지네 안셈 디기 루심 디기 용어 쉬어 선배 되게 잠재 고미알아서 봐라 근디마세 아는 저게 셈전 that me member Dundoric, Nenazata Ganga, Yedegenda, Sayatonia Ganga, and Subole Nenazionjet, Digi the Ganga, Mangu, your water, your the Denigure sometimes, then that is to do, you do that. That was also Beji Lalen, that Denigi Tashi Yoban and a Padochiare, Toshi Mena, that was some Nalia, that Ninja, that is to do a tower show, and because sometimes Denigi and the same Digi. 강하당 샘전 두중바 삼바탐체 섬망한바티 시제 코이라 잠바다 세외 섬을 개월 쇼어서 몰람잡 데니게 샘전 네바 동아 데니 여바티다 탐제 동아데세 아니 식데니게 내래 뉴도 타지 디기도 용어 쇼어서 몰람 데니게 용어서 섬에 데니게 잠제 곰제 안데 데니게 몰람자래 데니게다 아주게 제치 최바로지 푸야로시네레 메네로 타베네 데니게 샘전디게 Tiki to the Dunga said, Chidu, Sampe, some Daje, Dushi, some Davina, that Nikeo to Vena, that Rangi Gansu, some Nala, Jambata, Niche, Zawacumgore, that is some not cohere, Delatine, and so that so Dondala, some Dango, died Shandaduna, some Dangorti, in and Digi Kienchen, Mansu, some of the Sanjoko Montoya, tied near your door. Dinigi give a chima in a Digi and Dinigis Ungore, Chesa, this Samudi, Yana, Jangore, said to Sungor, I don't know.
The way that I encourage you to meditate on this verse is to think of those that you know who have difficult personalities, those that you do not like to be about, to be in their company, whether they're people in your life now or that you've known in the past. And come to recognize that this person is not their afflictions, that the person is not their mind, it's not and certainly not their afflictions. Secondly, that those afflictions that arise so easily due to habituation cause them to suffer. And they have been suffering like this throughout this life and most probably in lives previous because of the strong habituation to their afflictions. Recognize that this person is in pain. Then that leads you to very easily generate compassion for them. May they be free of their afflictions. May they be free of this pain. And then to generate love towards them. May they abide in lasting happiness. So these afflictions never arise again. So they abide in lasting happiness. And do this meditation again and again so that when you think of this person, your response is not one of aversion, but one of love and compassion for them. And also, you can recognize that people suffer two forms of pain. One is that of physical pain and then mental pain. Mostly thus far we spoke about mental pain through the afflictions, but also through those suffering from physical pain. Generate the aspiration, may beings be able to receive the medical care they require. Wherever that exists in the world, may they have access to it, and may it be effective for them. If it does not exist yet in the world, may those causes quickly be cultivated so that it does exist, and that beings can become free of physical suffering too. So in this way, you generate the aspiration, may all beings be free of mental suffering, particularly they're thinking of the afflictions, as well as physical suffering. May all beings have the abundance of conditions they need, medical conditions, medical treatment, food, and so forth. Then one can strengthen this aspiration. May all beings be free of suffering. May they abide in happiness. So we started out with specific people. We extended it now to all. May all beings be free of suffering. May all beings abide in lasting happiness. And to make this come about, I will create causes and dedicate it to this. I will strive to continue to abandon my own afflictions, to not justify my afflictions, to be on guard against the arisal of pride, to be on guard against the arisal of any other afflictions, and this merit that I create thereby, I dedicate to all beings. And now I will engage in a specific accumulation of virtue, which I offer to others. May this virtue ripen on others. Then one may recite the Mani mantra or Mani Padme Hum, or engage in other accumulation of virtue. And then finally dedicate this virtue so that all beings attain lasting happiness, and that one quickly becomes a Buddha so as to be able to guide others to become Buddhas too. So this then is how I encourage you to meditate here.
다디 삼로디 장고리 세지송거와다 먼저 랍제티레 디산디네게 삼로디 양지 차를 찍니 당바쯤에 이야기 조투야 시어 말와다 차를 찍니 야네 양도 루스탄베네 다 삼로디 바 슈크체르 셔셔 뉴벌마서 셔셔 두고래 데 세우시오와 베나한즈 류제로 다가와 류제 당보 약보차야라 당보로네 약보차기 말 류제디 바 수부디 야네 양도 직장도 데 수부 류제디 약보차 두고와 디나신 수부 류제나 저 야네 잔도 수부디디는 예고야고 차진 거로와 제가 디나신 롭좀 가리네 야네네 자네 야게 두고로 당아서 디나신 아저스 개위 상비초 잠바나 제외 삼바随便 삼로 현례 팬배 삼로디 야네도 두우신 뭐수 라른 다투나 야고래 마두베네 삼로디 야네도 당베네 데 삼로디 뉴버 쳇셔도네 디네 삼로 뉴슈디 레소나 데네 저기 현례 로버체와야 강아셔라 메팅 아니 강아지 마셈바제 아니 직 아니야 소 로버체 투야도 용거로와 가상 슈변하신 제모제게 심주 휴치여베나 난 차베잡나레 니마 차오여나레 강알라마심바 제모제 투도와 어디나신 잔리에 팬베셈바데 제외 삼바 데니기도 장게 데네 삼로도 슈치문 뉴바르치 야고 이래요도 데네 강알라마심바 세보콤토와 잔리아 로펜베 주투야데 용거로와 제전 다당한 저게다 디리 롭센디게 가지 삼나나리아 장도셔야데 내내 삼나 상보데 두스제네 지야네야데 장고리 공고리 야게 땅고리 에서다 디한테 디유주비에게 동아세야다 라진이가 동아세야 라진이 디유주에게 규티레 삼노티레 디장고리 에서 세상 공로당 대차당 공로 나야 전심 차도 랑제 삼노디 라진이가 동아게 규르디 가삼 다교마 디메가서 고래서야데 두스제네 동송고로 받아
For meditation to actually change one has to do the same meditation repeatedly over a sustained period. So this word translated as meditation, it has as synonyms habituation and familiarization. So this is how we should understand meditation. We are developing new mental habits. We are familiarizing ourselves with a particular way of thinking. And thereby, we are breaking our habituation or familiarization with other ways of thinking. This is the meaning of habituation. So this is the meaning of meditation. So it contains this the implication of repetition over a sustained period. So yesterday I gave the illustration of those who have their heart set on becoming world-class athletes or sports people. We know how they train. We've seen the documentaries. No matter the weather, no matter the time of the year, no matter the other responsibilities they have in their life, they are training day in, day out. And likewise, maybe from my own experience, where we are not world-class athletes, but if we have tried to get physically in shape, we know going to the gym now and again, it doesn't lead to much transformation. One needs to go every day, repeatedly, over a sustained period. And then your body changes. Training the body, training the mind, in this regard are no different. One needs repetition. One needs to do the same meditation repeatedly over a sustained period. When one starts, one is likely only to do meditation in meditation sessions. As one gets better, as one gets more habituated to this way of thinking, it becomes ever easier to recall that meditation throughout one's day. And then it starts to have ever more of an impact on oneself. So this is what we need to do. To perceive the teachings, keep perceiving the teachings, and reflect on them again and again, certainly in formal meditation, and try and recall them as well outside of formal meditation. And what we are trying to alter is our habitual way of thinking, so that we become ever more loving, compassionate, patient, ethical, so that these become the minds that are dominant within us, who we naturally are, how we naturally respond to life's challenges. In this way, our mind is becoming much more subdued, much more peaceful. We are much happier. And the afflictions, they arise far less often. And when they do arise, they pass much more quickly. That kind of change requires repetition. So I encourage you to these meditations that you're learning here and that you're being guided in here, continue them not just in the retreat, but beyond the retreat too.
Kadamba lama suyu sunya leya ane dinde sungore ngama kanche dadi lula deus ngama kanche dadi lula deus kewa ngama karche yume kewa chevre du miga chevre de dadi lula deus chima kanto kewa chima leya ane chike yaga chitore duwa chugore dadi semla deus ngama kanche dadi lula deus chima kanto dadi ane semla deus nyele the 65 years and
the author of this text is from a Kadampa tradition, and another Kadampa master, a famous expression of his is, if you want to know what you did in your last life, look at this rebirth that you've achieved, this human rebirth. If you want to know what will become of you in future lives, look at your mind.
세상에 다른 lui 때문에 lui 미류 하는 가서 지게 야고수부 되고 하는 소외 튕겨내야 강한 매바 야고 유바디 가르지스네 개왕아마 하는 지기 추림수야다 잠바코미야 서버코미야기 니기 되오레스 제가 디냐마 개왕아마 제바레스 제가 가서 가르이네 규단 kiến 매바 용고 규단 kiến来되는 용고 제가 되데 다대응 아주 lui 나는 미류 토바 된델이야 하는 튕겨 야고 유에 되게 되네 야고 용아디 개왕아마 하는 가족이 초사 개와 진비 냠내 제하다 쇠배 냠내 제 추림수야라 소바 제베기 되고 디레 제서 개왕아마 제여레스 대단히 되고 되게 다들 세대량 미류된 톱 대야다 튕겨 야고다 되는 야고야디 디레스 제가 디 규제부터라 되는 규리 여바디 냐마 좋아다 되는다 하고 두고래서 나 치마 거를 치마다 개와 치마 나선마 도그리베 나타나 미 기그리에서 바디 다들 셈을 봐삼 당고래 다들 삼로 나라야 소스나라야 아니지 샹리아 잠바다 제외 삼라 아니지 룡아 있으면 샹라 네버 지금 매스베 삼로 아니지 샹 판베 삼로도 두시네 짐바다야게 되네 삼로 쉬어버이나 대 삼로 하고 여버네 개와 치마에 온조고와 토그리 톱제네 제다다 나신 되냐고 용거리에서 그래 다 세델레 셈델이야 샹레 네베 삼바 체외 삼바 직배 직되니게 녀모바 되니게 콩으로 되니게 야야라제 되니게 네베 자와다 체외 삼바 되니게 유대베이나 삼로 된시여베나 니기 레앙암바사제 개와치마 아니 배 강아체 등아손마 계제 강아체다 되는 중그레스 제가 되네자 소수게 삼론하려야 또 다시 제제 삼로디 마음반에 야보용하게 또 규디 삼로디 하고 와지 디삼로디 야네 야노 삼비주 땅거디 계제 모르겠어 뭐 나 돈다 지수데 찍바랬다 저도 나 가서 찍바차들
We've all achieved a human rebirth, and we have, in general, I imagine, we have good conditions in this life. So whatever we have experienced, or whatever we are experiencing in this life, is a karmic result from causes created in lives previous. So in dependence on causes created previously, we are living the result of those causes in this life. So we've all experiencing the results of ethical restraint in that we have achieved a human rebirth. And our material circumstances comes from generosity practiced in previous lives. We are also experiencing the results of patience, joyous perseverance. So those causes that we have created in the past are what we are experiencing in this life. And then, so that's how we look back to see how we lived in our previous life to gain this life. Sorry. But now, what's of more importance than wondering about lives gone by is what lies in wait for us when death comes. Will my future rebirth be again in the higher realms, or will I fall to the lower realms? And what kind of conditions will I have in wherever I am born? So that is what happens in our future lives is entirely dependent on the causes we are creating now. Our future rebirth is the result of the causes being created in this life. So here we think of the good qualities such as ethical restraint, generosity, patience, joyous perseverance, as well as love and compassion. To the extent that these are dominant within us, we can have confidence about our future lives. To the extent that those ways of thinking are strangers to us, to that extent we know our future lives will be challenging. So therefore this expression from the Kadampa master that what we know how we lived in our previous lives based on the result that we're experiencing now, and we know how our future lives will be based on our mind now. This has this similar meaning to what is being presented in this verse.
Bendigo samlo 나야 돼 정도 제바디 경험도 지고 말은 알아서 차산 찍바랑 아당아서 찍바래 이제 아주 차산님도 제 고고 war다 나도 알 경험들 제 오래 같이 살인다고 같이 먹어야지 그 말이다 아주 차산 찍바래.
The meditations presented here I really encourage you to do, and I'm saying this from a position of someone just like you who's wanting to improve my mind, to become a better person. So I engage in these meditations and I encourage you to engage in them, because this is the way to radically transform your mind. So I'm not just sitting here on high giving you advice, but this is advice I try and live in accordance with myself.
아니 디체디나지 밀게야 단 체디나지 밀게네 안데네야 수고디게 약보용야다 안데 소유 튕게 약보용야기 땅은 저기 삼문당타데 규사고로와 디 규사다디 땅에 이제 경험도 망부제 양생야서 고고래 제자다 네 야게 봐 쉬셔봐나 다 돈다래 많은 주기 다 꿀로들이야 맞듯이 상 쉐바나제 심자테 대화데 템바다 심 중간도 저어쇼 세베 삼다야다 심자 담지게 된다 상요고바 토바쇼 심비게 자주 심지 군야라 두 삼다야디 도시도 군로체 데네 군론라네 대미 다소소랑 뇽류가 이순요관에 샬라 뇌베자와 자오이네 지금에 심비게 삼로디 디 삼로디 하네 양어 땅고 디 삼로 땅에기 디 개와치마 하다 미고반 깨게 규티리다 디 삼다는 메샬라 네바 지금에 선배 선물 수rim시 오래 내게 선물이 안에 양 땅배나 개와치마 원뒤 하다 미고방 토베 규래 달 하다 미고방 톱나양 안델야 배 직수부 네 나서 몽보사야 동에 매대가 네 튕기가 강아 쉬우셔나 지금 말와 대사들에 튕기 약보시고 그래 튕기 약보 공해야 될야 규디 가르스는 진바다야 되래 소시 삼문나야 소시야야 Shenlia, and she Chiku Pachimba Tangi, Sempe, that's Donwe Semba Chane, Sosuki Kang Tuduki Shalia, and Jimba Tangwaina, and the Jimmy Jibodi, Sosuki Tungia, we on the Chagore. She's not that so again now to other, the same general, so you have Shivan, Benes Kiro, that Shimburuyana, Labado Tisulia, Ninja, Sempe, Samta, Delia, and Jik, to contradict that. Digi Chuna, there was the temper show, could do a several shows and be some Dutch collier, Kalaja, the dinner some Dutch, Jimba, Jimbere, Jeza Denigi, those Chimbataya, dinner, Gewachima, and the Twingy Yawe, Gure. So that's Silver Comiere, that Digi, Silver Mongos, that Shangi, the Karchev and the Pala, Controlang, Conromalawache, Abachi, Sim, Clearly due to Yadi, the Gachimore, this Silver Combina, and the Gewachima, so. And Seti Nashing as Subuti Yahu, and the me, Sutonaya, Chika Woyada, Denegi Ungures, Sebat, Nadushim. And the Chimasu Seba Junji said, Junji said, Danganzi said Delia, and Kiwi Chawala, Jail, Galala, better the Mudi Chigina, some Beta Kedinang, Kiwi Yamnaja Shanla, Jamba, there was some Yamna Yaku Chigia, some Mudi Galala, Jadi Junji, D. Jeven. Gewachima Midang got a Kevin and Kiwi Yamna Chelia, Jamba that Zewakumla Gauchum, Dicheko Rege, Junugum. That dinner as Molam Jawa Rege, or Danga Gewachima, one you go on, me, Tadami go on top, dinner, Kiwi Senior was Cheche, and this and a Shu, and Jam Nije Chanshu similar to Yamna Cheko, Koho Yabora Show, said he, and the Molam Jawa is. That was in Molam Javaina, the Molam Yushugingi. Gewachima, Gawat Giving and so Checha and Kivishin Yabote, Dinner, Checha go Bragari, just that Dineza, deep bear Masikachimo Chago, just that Luma is usually Turum Soya, Sebocomia, Sunizamia, and Dinner, and Chimbenyamja, the Molamja, Dingadi, Yeshua, a dinner, Kunodelia, Semjatam Jigana, and Jake Jamni to come to Bana, the Kuno Janjusim, you couldn't land the Jebana. There's a Gewachima when you go about the Digiru Guare, Sanji go to Guacha, Niga Chagore, or do she idea on the Gachamushu Chadigore.
So as just presented, the causes we accumulated in our previous lives led to the result we are experiencing now. And the causes we are accumulating now will lead to what we will experience in lives to come. So I just want to talk about this again. So many of you, I apologize, you would have heard this many times, but nevertheless, it's only benefit for hearing it again. So combining now what I'm going to cover with the meditation thus far, when you cultivate your motivation, starting with a valuing of others, an appreciation for others, recognizing that at the fundamental level we are all the same, leads us to a determination, I will not harm others, but wherever I can, I will benefit them. That will be the guiding principle for my day ahead and my life from this point. I will not harm others through what I say, do, and even what I think, and I'll benefit them through what I say, do, and think. So when one's cultivating this expression of, I will not harm others because I value them. This is ethical restraint. Merely not harming others, intentionally not creating harm, this is ethical restraint. But here, we're doing it in our context of the Mahayana. I will not harm others. This is ethical restraint, and it is the cause that leads to an excellent rebirth, such as a human being. Secondly, I will not harm others, but I'll benefit them because I value them, I care for them. This leads to generosity, the wish to be of benefit to others. And this is most easily expressed through giving of material support to others and so forth. There are various ways to practice generosity. The karmic results of this is that in our future lives one will have material comfort, financial security, and so forth. So many of you have pets at home. Of course, you feed your pets. You don't let them go and forage for their own food. So you feed your pets. When you feed your animals, if you have a motivation of generosity, of giving to them, as opposed to just putting out their food so that they can eat, then you are creating virtue. So use this as a daily act of accumulating virtue and feed your pets. Or maybe you feed birds outside and so forth. use this as an act of generosity. And then the third cause is that of patience. And patience I've spoken about already. It's the mind that's undisturbed in the face of adversity. So the karmic result of this is that one easily has harmonious relationships with others. You get on with people, people easily get on with you. And on a physical level, your body is attractive, your sense power, so your hearing, your sight, these are without flaw. And the fourth cause is that of joyous perseverance. So it's ethics, it's generosity, patience, and our joyous perseverance. So joyous perseverance is a mind that delights in virtue, a mind that takes great pleasure in restraining oneself within the confines of what's ethical, pleasure in being generous, pleasure in being patient, and so forth. So joyous perseverance in the mind that delights in virtue ensures that in future lives, one will continue to delight in virtue, and therefore one will have a virtuous personality, one will seek out virtue, one won't be inclined to non-virtue, but inclined to virtue. This then makes it so much easier to engage in the Dharma, to recognize the value in the Dharma. And then the final cause is that of prayer, where one makes prayers often expressed through the dedication of merit, to continue to meet the Dharma in each and every life, to continue to come under the care of our spiritual teachers, to recognize them as such, to want to receive their teachings and to strive in accomplishing their teachings, to live a life under their guidance, a life striving to fulfill the teachings that one is given, and thereby come to quickly develop bodhicitta. So the purpose of prayer such as this is so that in future lives one meets the Dharma, and meets the Mahayana Dharma, and thereby transforming what would otherwise be a human rebirth into a precious human rebirth. So by doing the meditation as presented here, one is creating the causes both for excellent rebirths, but also for Buddhahood, because at various points one is expressing this in terms of the Mahayana, that one is engaging in generosity and patience and ethics and joyous perseverance in order to be of benefit to others.
Dine nyamne jede manga cheso samdaya jan yari doa ta samdaya da pa troson tanggoya de khasen jimbe nyamne kapla de to singolo wa to tong semba samlo ta ti samdaya de ne jaliya jimba ta jimbe ta de ya ji sansing ge jimba ta ya chugi jimba ta mi ji bi jimba ta ya se de mangbo ro wa se da ya kunchole chebo huya medo huya da yuanjia huya la so da pue huya la so ba da ngan mande huya cha da chebo huya de jimba na cha go re that Shenli Yang me Nepal Nyamdali, Manchuki, Robachea, and Ziganji Shenlia, Kalaro, the Denigi, Simjana, the Denigi Sosolia, Denigi, Robache to the Shazanda, something Jiban, something Jiman to worry. And she has Tikia Solo Joya, Denigi Yanga, Chunala Burus, that Denigi choosing the Zan Solo Joya, tired the solo in the Jovana, Mita, Semjan, and the Denigi Solo Jovagi. The top Jovina, that is Michipijimba Chagore. Bayanji, the Nigi, Sosugi, Shi Yundiki, Pa, Shi Yundiki, Shimbati, Ma, Shan, Lap, Consul Yundin, Jarju, and the Church in that, Dimembe, Shi Yankan, Shan, Pembe, Sembe, Lapcho, Consulia, Anjiki, Yago Shin Jovina, the Soy Jimba Chagore. Just a Jimbalea, Shikmanguya, the Chuggy Jimba, Sansing Jimba, Michipijimba, said, Luciore. Then is another. Denigi, Shanadiki, Sebo, Comia, Tunju, Zumia, La Sobadang, and the Jiggy, Jam Nijicum, Janjism Gonja, Samlokanya Diamador, Chilu, Trosota, Guaminuadi. Then Jimbe Yamne, the Tongi Simbasi, the Tongi Simbadi, Tongas, Tongi, some tire. That detoneda, Manjugita, Yazi Jimbataya to go water, Denigi, the patient idea that Trosota, the Jimbe Yamne de Yungore.
Now, 2 days together, I've mentioned a number of trainings to engage in, and certainly mentioned now. These are all trainings of the mind, because this is the meaning of practicing the Dharma, of being a Buddhist practitioner. It means one is training the mind. And this word often translated as practice is the word for training. So to understand what is Buddhism, it's training the mind. And the various trainings we've looked at are all mental. Love, compassion, ethical restraint, these are all training the mind. Patience, joyous perseverance, making prayer, and generosity, these are all mental. So they do not require one to necessarily do anything physical. And the only one that requires some financial involvement is that of generosity. So just to talk a little further about generosity, because generosity there is of several types. So what mostly comes to mind is when one hears generosity, is material generosity. But there's also the generosity of giving fearlessness and giving the Dharma. So material generosity, the most common is that of making offerings. So whether it's offerings to the 3 jewels, whether it's offerings to the Lama, whether it's giving to those in need. This is the normal expression, giving to charities. This is the normal expression of material generosity. Generosity of fearlessness. This is helping those who are in desperate need, whose life is in danger, and thereby giving them fearlessness. So this for us can be expressed as helping those who are hungry. And again, feeding your pets, feeding animals outside, and giving, helping to provide medical care, whether it's through giving to charities or directly helping individuals who cannot afford medical care. And thirdly is that of giving the Dharma, which can be through teaching or can be through giving Dharma advice when you have that required relationship or suitable relationship with someone. So for some acts of generosity, material generosity, and perhaps fearlessness, giving of fearlessness, there is a financial component, but what is required for all of these trainings is the mental component. And it's most clear with love, compassion, ethics, patience, joy, perseverance, and prayer. These are all mental expressions. One may, they will have an impact on your speech and your physical behavior, but what one is training is one's mind. But with generosity too, be very clear that for an act to be generous doesn't merely mean you spending some money, doesn't mean you giving advice. It means you must have a mind of generosity, a wish to give. So generosity literally is giving. So it's a wish to give. Then it's an act of generosity. So then thank you. We can conclude there for today. Thank you so much.